YouTube! Today we're traveling to, today we're traveling to Hallam, Nebraska. I hope I said that correctly. Hallam? Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyways, this was the largest tornado on record before El Reno. Largest tornado ever before El Reno. El Reno got to 2.6 miles wide. Unimaginable in size. So, let's learn how big this tornado was. This video is by Sweggle Studios, by the way. We finally got to watch one of his videos. This is our second one we're watching of him. Does amazing work. I'll have his the links to his channel in this video in the description below. If you haven't checked them out, make sure to check them out.
What is the secret atmospheric mechanism behind the largest tornadoes ever recorded? How do these rare super tornadoes form? The average width of a tornado is about 275 meters or 0.17 miles. That's about 3 city blocks wide. Pretty large actually, but they can get much, much larger. The 2020 Cookeville, Tennessee EF4, one of the most significant tornadoes in the past 5 years, was double the average tornado size, approaching 500 meters or 0.31 miles wide, about 6 city blocks wide. One of last year's worst tornado events, the Greenfield, Iowa EF4, had a peak width of 1,200 meters or about 0.75 miles wide.
Ooh.
But we're just getting started. The 2011 Hackleburg-Phil Campbell EF5, one of the strongest tornadoes ever recorded, had a peak width of 2,000 meters or 1.25 miles wide. The Hackleburg-Phil Campbell EF5 is literally one of the largest and most destructive tornadoes ever, an incredibly rare, massive tornado event. But what if I told you that there have been a few tornadoes that were double the size of that tornado? There is, of course, the 2013 El Reno EF3. That was an insane 4,200 meters wide or 2.6 miles wide. And then there's the often forgotten about, but just as significant, 2004 Hallam, Nebraska F4, which had a peak width of 4,000 meters or 2.5 miles wide.
Wow. So, I mean, it was right there with the 2013 El Reno. That's wow. It's huge, man. Just barely. El Reno was just barely bigger. It's hard to imagine tornadoes that big, man, but they happen. They happen. Also, on a cool note, all the tornadoes he talked about there at the beginning, Greenfield, Cooksville, Hackleburg, we've already covered every one of those.
That is absolutely massive. Can you imagine a tornado of this magnitude and size tearing through downtown Oklahoma City? Insane. Now the 20...
Don't you wish that evil on Oklahoma, especially Oklahoma City? You got more and all that kind of close together. They've already been through it multiple times. Multiple times. They just need to take all of Moore and possibly Oklahoma City and just turn the entire city into like an underground shelter.
2013 El Reno, Oklahoma tornado may have been the largest in recorded history, but the 2004 Hallam, Nebraska F4 was essentially the same size, only 200 meters in diameter smaller. But it doesn't get hardly the same amount of attention as its slightly bigger brother, El Reno. And this is a shame because the 2004 Hallam F4 is in many ways actually more...
Hallam. Which one is it?
Interesting than the 2013 El Reno tornado. Don't get me wrong, I think the 2013 El Reno EF3 is very intriguing. It's one of the strangest meteorological events ever recorded, but there is a few interesting aspects.
I just want to say, like, we can all agree, right, that we're extremely lucky that the 2013 El Reno tornado was mainly spent its time out in the middle of a field, right? Because here soon I'd like to do a video of just my thoughts, like the top 5 tornadoes. And I'm just going to say right now that if we were to put some of these tornadoes in the exact same situation, right? There's an empty town. Nobody's there. But, we got plenty of buildings and vehicles and stuff. An abandoned town. No one's going to lose property. No lives are lost. I feel like El Reno 2013 would easily be in the top 5. I may catch some heat over that. Because, I've had a lot of people, in my comments tell me about tornadoes they think's the strongest. And that varies largely. I just feel like if you took the 2013 El Reno tornado and you sent it down the path of a town like we just talked about, no one's going to get hurt. I think it's going to be hard to top. And the same thing could probably be looked at with the El Reno and Piedmont tornado. El Reno has produced probably 2 of the strongest tornadoes of all time. I know I'm going to catch some heat over that, but I just want to also say, of 2.6 miles wide, this storm was moving. We're talking about 2013 El Reno, right? 2.6 miles wide. It is traveling 60, 70 miles per. What was it? Somewhere between 50 to 70 miles per hour. It's fast. And usually, when you think of these large tornadoes traveling through these areas, if they're moving quicker, it kind of may be a good thing because, it's over quick. But it was the fact of how big it was. It's not like it's a small tornado. Yeah, it's traveling fast, but it's huge. You're going to experience a lot of that storm at those wind speeds of nearly 300 miles per hour. And the El Reno and Piedmont moved a stinking oil rig. That's my understanding. That is still the heaviest object ever moved by a tornado. Imagine what it would do to a house, even a well-constructed house. Okay, I just wanted to get that off my chest. Let me know what you guys think.
About the Hallam F4 that make it unique from El Reno. And that's the topic of today's video. What were the unique meteorological conditions that came together to create this massive monster? How did a town directly in its path, Hallam, Nebraska, fare? And why do some meteorologists claim that the Hallam F4 should actually hold the title of largest of all time instead of El Reno? That is what we'll be discussing in today's video. But before we get to that, we gotta talk about a major problem in the modern world, and that is data breaches. Time and time again, I hear on the news about large websites for sponsoring the video. During the early morning of May 22nd, 2004, the central U.S. plains, especially Kansas and Nebraska, were incredibly humid. Winds from the southeast were bringing in lots of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. While there were winds coming in from the southeast, there were also cooler, upper-level winds coming in from the southwest. A low-pressure region was gradually getting stronger in northwest Kansas. Due to its limited eastward movement, southern Nebraska and northern Kansas would remain an ideal area for supercell and tornado development. The people down at the National Weather Service Storm Prediction Center saw the potential for a large tornado outbreak and began issuing warnings several days in advance. On the morning of the tornado itself, the Storm Prediction Center issued an outlook showing eastern Nebraska and western Iowa.
Early warnings, baby.
3 out of 5.
We love early warnings around here.
Moderate risk for severe weather. The tornado outlook gave a 15% chance of a tornado developing within 25 miles of any point within this shaded area, including both Nebraska and Iowa. The forecast given by the Storm Prediction Center stated this: isolated supercell storms will likely develop rapidly over eastern Nebraska and western/central Iowa by late afternoon or early evening. These storms appear to have the greatest risk for tornadoes due to very favorable low-level shear profiles and a moist boundary layer. And of course, as predicted, during the mid-afternoon, several supercells formed over Nebraska and Iowa. Several small tornadoes formed during the late afternoon in various locations. One of the first was an F1 that touched down over Furnace County, Nebraska. Another F1 tornado touched down in the late afternoon in Fremont County. This tornado traveled along the Platte River and ended up hitting a Walmart around 6 p.m. But none of these tornadoes could compare to what was to come. Around 6:45 p.m. in southeast Nebraska, a large cumulonimbus cloud that would eventually create one of the largest tornadoes of all time was rapidly forming. And I mean very rapidly. Southeast Nebraska was primed for supercell development, and a small cumulus rain shower quickly transformed into a large supercell in just 30 minutes. Oklahoma University meteorology students Gabe Garfield, Jeff Snyder, and Brent Shambaugh were heading west near Fairbury, Nebraska, straight towards the supercell, hoping to capture footage of a tornado at its base. Gabe, Jeff, and Brent were some of the few storm chasers who were able to document the entire record-breaking Hallam tornado.
Date is May 22nd, 2004, near the town of, I don't know, I can't remember, Fairfield or Fairview, Nebraska. Heading west on 136, went through Beatrice, got a ticket.
Gabe, Brent, and Jeff didn't have to wait long. The initial phases of a tornado were beginning to form right as they arrived.
Spin! How did that happen?
That happened so fast!
Holy cow!
Look at that rotation, too.
That got its act together and fast! Get your camera, Brent!
It's gonna be a pretty big
Get your camera. That's gonna be a big tornado.
The first tornado is not the Hallam tornado itself, but a precursor. While it only briefly touched down north of Hebron,
Yo, those guys are having a blast. Having an absolute blast.
receiving an F0 rating, the motion of the mesocyclone is absolutely insane, something that the storm chasers take note of.
Look at the motion.
I know! This thing is a beast!
The supercell continued to the northeast, and the OU meteorology students continued chasing it down. Even at the very beginning of its life cycle, these storm chasers could tell this supercell was unique. And it wouldn't take long for another, more significant tornado to form. Around 7 p.m., just north of Alexandria, Nebraska, an F2 rapidly came together. This F2 traveled 8 miles, causing minor damage to several homes. Now, one common theme with many of the tornadoes from this storm is that they were surrounded by loads and loads of dust. You've heard of rain-wrapped tornadoes.
Yo. I want to know if you guys see the same thing as me. Okay, so you got the, what's that called? The wall cloud? And down towards the bottom, you got like the brown, right? Kind of looks like it's starting to kick up dust or something. But if you look to the right, it almost looks like two eyeballs. It almost looks like a face. Like up in the clouds, like barely above the wall cloud looking ordeal. It almost looks like a face. That's creepy.
Tornadoes. Well, many of these tornadoes were dust wrapped, making them often hard to make out. For example, the OU storm chasers did see the very end of the Alexandria, Nebraska F2, but they really couldn't tell what was going on because of all the dust.
Something on the backside of that. Oh my gosh, it's a huge tornado, man.
I can't tell on the way.
It's a huge tornado.
Finally, around 7:30 Central Time, the initial formation of the record-breaking Hallam tornado began just west of the town of Dakin. The OU storm chasers were actually in Dakin at the time and were able to capture it on film. At first, it would appear as a beautiful white cone tornado descending from within the wall cloud.
We're about 36 miles west of Beatrice, moving northeast at 20 miles.
Very much on the ground.
Locations impacted include Dakin, Tobias.
I'll tell you when.
This is a dangerous situation. Act quickly.
Thing's gonna get big fast. Look at how low the backside of that meso.
Yep.
Otherwise, go to a small interior room on the lowest floor of the building.
Get out of the road.
Watch remains in effect until 11.
You idiots.
It was at this moment that Gabe captured something remarkable on film. So here's the tornado, right?
Yep.
But what is this? Is this also a part of the tornado? Not exactly. This is a rotating wall cloud, aka a spinning cloud extending from the base of the supercell itself. When the warm air beneath the supercell rises, it begins to cool, eventually reaching its dew point where it turns into condensation, and then you have a wall cloud. Really, it's a part of the supercell mesocyclone lowering from the cloud base. But just take a look at this tornado and its parent wall cloud. Like, this is crazy. Look how low and prominent this wall cloud is compared to its parent supercell. And look how fast it's spinning. This is not a typical mesocyclonic wall cloud, and all of this may play a key role in massive tornado formation. So what are the key factors behind the development of extremely large tornadoes? Well, there is actually something known as a super tornado, also referred to as a mega wedge. This is its own class of tornadoes. It's an extremely rare breed of tornadoes that is still a bit perplexing to researchers and meteorologists to this day. Let's go back to the 2013 El Reno tornado, the largest tornado of all time, with a width of 2.6 miles. This tornado has been described as a multi-vortex mesocyclone. It was as if the wall cloud itself reached the ground, and inside this wall cloud mesocyclonic tornado, there were dozens of vortices rotating around each other. Like, check out this video right here. This is video from within the El Reno tornado, and you can tell, like, there are just random vortices all throughout. Another example may be the Birmingham 2011 EF4. Look how close this wall cloud is to actually touching the ground.
Man.
These unique tornadoes have been called ground scrapers. Check out this insane example from Henry Swartz filming a tornado in 2016 in Woodburn, Indiana.
Ooh, cold chills, man. That's just scary. That's all you can say about that. That's just scary.
Never seen a tornado before.
I never did either, but I was coming up that road, and I was like, getting my notch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely insane. Like, the wall cloud is on the ground, spinning rapidly. Like, the whole thing looks like a massive, huge tornado. Is the whole thing a tornado? Is it its own unique meteorological event? Either way, it's an incredibly rare tornado formation. Keep all this in mind as we return to the Hallam tornado supercell. It was now 7:40 and the Hallam F4 had been on the ground for over 10 minutes, often obscured by Nebraska dust. As Gabe and his fellow storm chasers followed the storm, the mesocyclone wall cloud does seem to be getting closer and closer to the ground. At this moment, Gabe and the other storm chasers pulled over to the side of the road. They're not exactly sure what they're looking at, but they're filming the entire mesocyclonic wall cloud. At one moment, a tornado appears to form on the left side of the mesocyclone.
Oh yeah, I see it.
There it is, coming down to the ground on the backside. Come on, let's go a little bit further north and east, man.
A few moments later, another stovepipe tornado forms on the right side of the mesocyclone.
What a tube! What a tube!
It's worth noting that at this time, the National Weather Service stated that the Hallam F4 tornado was over a mile wide. These two tornadoes are clearly not over a mile wide. So what are they? Are they satellite tornadoes? Are they perhaps two inner vortices that are soon going to be engulfed by this entire massive mega wedge? I don't know. Gabe and the other OU storm chasers headed east in an attempt to catch up with the tornado, but unfortunately it was getting increasingly further away and darker outside. Around 7:55 near the town of Western, they witnessed, from a distance, the tornado double in size near the towns of Wilbur and Claytonia. And around 8:10, the tornado barely clipped the town of Wilbur. Several homes and buildings were partially destroyed within the town. But thankfully, the main portion of the tornado was still over a rural area. Around this time, the Storm Prediction Center upgraded their convective outlook, now showing a level 4 out of 5 high risk for severe weather. The tornado probability map also increased to a 25% chance of a tornado forming within 25 miles over eastern Nebraska or western Iowa. In fact, in the report they stated, tornado outbreak in progress from eastern Nebraska to central Iowa. The tornado was nearly 2.2 miles wide at this point, already breaking records. As it continued to the northeast, it struck several farmsteads near the town of Claytonia. It was around this moment in the tornado's life cycle when it strengthened from an F2 to a more significant F4. When it moved into northwest Gage County, close to Claytonia, it caused the most intense damage. Numerous farmsteads in the country were devastated by the high-end F4 strength, with the wind speeds exceeding 200 miles per hour. Some estimates were even as high as 250 miles per hour. If this were measured with the modern EF scale, it would be considered an EF5. As the tornado moved into Lancaster County, it maintained its F4 intensity. The tornado would pass just north of Claytonia, but straight ahead was the town of Hallam. And Hallam...
Yo, this tornado's about to be 10 times the size of this town. We've been here before. Greensburg. Jesus.
Hallam was directly in its path. Making matters worse, it was getting very dark outside, and the edges of the tornado were getting more and more difficult to distinguish. Even though it was quite dark out, Gabe, Brent, and Jeff did witness the tornado as it was approaching Hallam. But unfortunately, viewing conditions were not ideal, as the tornado was now rain-wrapped.
I think there's probably something in the ground over there, but there's no way of telling. Yes.
Rain-wrapped, nighttime, 2.5 mile wide tornado with over 200 mile per hour winds approaching town. Wonderful.
But there's still, I mean, just an insane amount of rotation everywhere.
Within Hallam, the sirens rang out. It was pretty late on a Saturday, so thankfully most of the residents within Hallam were at home and able to seek shelter in their basements. Hallam would unfortunately take a direct hit, being fully engulfed by the monster around 8:35 p.m. Around 200 homes were demolished and almost 95% of Hallam was severely damaged. There were 38 injuries and luckily only one fatality within the town, a 70-year-old woman.
I thought he was fixing to say 0.
For the entire duration of the tornado, she would be the only death. Hallam's a pretty small community, so essentially the entire town was obliterated, including a train that was derailed just to the south. After the tornado had passed, many survivors walked out of their basements straight to the outdoors. Their homes were gone. Many of the survivors who were left homeless were taken by a bus to Southwest High School in Lincoln. As the massive tornado left the city of Hallam, it decreased in size significantly to almost a mile wide, so still very large. The small towns of Hickman, Firth, Panama, and Bennett were thankfully not within the path of the tornado. While it did not strike any more towns, the tornado still directly hit the rural yet pretty large Norris High School around 9 p.m. This is, by the way, this is a massive high school, like out in the middle of the country. Anyway, since the school year had ended the day before, on Friday, May 21st, the building was
It's like the size of a small town.
mostly deserted when the tornado struck. There was one instructor present, Phil Severson, an 8th grade math teacher who was finishing up his final grades. Severson claimed that he could hear the roar get louder and louder and that the entire building began to shake. His classroom only had minor damage, but the room right next to his had been completely destroyed. The roof had caved in.
My lord.
There were 11 other individuals inside the school at the time who were all able to seek shelter and make it out alive. Significant damage was done to the school, including the destruction of the football field, the auditorium's roof, and the school bus barn that housed 30 to
Oh my God.
40 buses. Like toys, these buses were flung all over the school property, on the roof, some of them were on the track. There were buses everywhere. It would take about a year to complete all the repairs, and during the 2004 to 2005 school year, the students had to study in a remote location. After heavily damaging the school with F2 strength, the tornado clipped the town of Bennett, Nebraska around 9 p.m. It was near the town of Bennett that the tornado caused F3 damage to a few rural homes. Finally, around 9:10 p.m., the record-breaking tornado dissipated in rural Otto County, Nebraska. Mike Johans, the governor of Nebraska at the time, took a tour of the region just after the event. According to him, the destruction was among the worst Nebraska has ever seen. The National Weather Service estimated peak wind speeds around 250 miles per hour, giving the tornado a high-end F4 rating. Of course, I did indeed search for remnants and destruction on Google Earth, and there are a few empty lots, a few slabs, a few random sidewalks going nowhere, but nothing too crazy. The town actually did a great job of rebuilding in the years after the event, and to this day, you really can't tell that a tornado went through it. All in all, the tornado lasted 1 hour and 40 minutes, traveling a massive 52 miles. Total damage estimated to be over $160 million in 2004 money, close to $210 million today. The Hallam F4 held the record for the largest tornado ever documented for almost 10 years until it was dethroned by the 2013 El Reno EF3. But Hallam is still quite unique when compared to the El Reno tornado. In fact, one could make an argument that technically the Hallam F4 should hold the title of largest tornado ever recorded, as it does hold the record for the largest condensation funnel ever recorded. What does that mean? Well, a condensation funnel is the funnel of the tornado. Tornadoes are full of different, debris, dirt, grass, structures. But when you witness a tornado, you also see its condensation funnel. That's that smooth looking cloud. A tornado is a region of low pressure, and depending on humidity and atmospheric conditions, the rotating air within the tornado can reach its condensation point. So the Hallam tornado has the largest confirmed condensation funnel ever. It was difficult to see because it was so dark out and so rain-wrapped, but there are a few photos out there if you look for them. When El Reno was at its peak size, it was really just a massive cluster of inner vortices, all rain-wrapped, so the exact shape was hard to define. That's why when you look at pictures of the El Reno tornado, it kind of just looks like a chaotic mess. And that's because it was a chaotic mess. Going back to that video from inside the El Reno tornado, you can just see the inner vortices all over the place. But El Reno was never fully organized as a full-on condensation funnel like the 2004 Hallam F4. Either way, both tornadoes are insane weather events, and they do both belong to the class of super tornado / mega wedge. So what are the factors behind these mysterious mega tornadoes? Is it the mesocyclonic wall cloud reaching the ground itself? Is it just intense winds surrounding the tornado kicking up dust? Perhaps it's just a cluster of tornadoes, kind of like the Greenfield, Iowa tornado, all within like this, dusty, I don't know. Please comment your theories below. And with that said, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you.
Hey, W video, man. W video. Hallam. I'm going to call it Hallam. Okay? Just make it more simple for me. Massive. 2.5 miles wide, man. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. The biggest shocker to me is that more destruction didn't happen when it traveled through that town. Like this, the tornado was 5 times the size of the town. Yeah, I mean, I know the destruction was bad. I do. But, I mean, did it look worse than some of the other tornadoes I've seen? Not technically. But man, was it massive. And I'm glad. That, not that many people got hurt. It sucks they lost their property, homes and stuff like that. Those things can be replaced. What was it? One fatality? One's too many, but for the situation, it's not bad. That high school, man, why was that high school that big? Like, what are they doing out there? They training up the Nebraska Cornhusker college football team. Dang, that's just a high school. That's crazy, man. And now, when you see the buses and stuff, that's wild. Done a lot of damage to that school. I'm glad the people that were inside the school were safe. Yeah, especially that one teacher. The next room over got collapsed in. So lucky, man. So lucky. And, hey, man, good job to the weather team there. They predicted all that. They had warnings days ahead. And even like when those guys were chasing the tornado, you could hear radio, them talking about the tornado to the public. Not the people chasing specifically, but it sounded like maybe a news channel or something. So, I mean, people were getting notified early. And therefore, they're able to get shelter. Those people took it serious, got shelter. And that obviously plays a huge role in the fact that there was, more fatalities. So good job on, everybody that worked on that. Great job. All right, guys, I am Cheap. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, and all that good jazz, and we'll catch you in the next one.